Hello friends, my name is Malvika and welcome to my channel. In this lecture, we will discuss about the historical perspective of education management in Indian context. This is a part 2 video and in our last video, we had discussed about Calcutta University Commission that was also known as Sadler Commission. Before starting the video, I request you to click on the subscribe button so that you can access to my latest videos as soon as I upload. Also, do not forget to like and comment in the comment section below on what topic of education management or mass communication you want me to discuss. So without further a delay, let us get started. Today's topic of our discussion is the third period that started from 1920 and lasted till 1947. It was also known as Provincial Autonomy. With the Government Act of 1919, diarchy or the rule of two was introduced in provincial administration. The administration of province was divided into two halves, the reserve department and the transfer department. So here one MCQ question can be made on the point here, which is the administration of province was divided into two halves. It is an important point. Please remember the first one was reserve department and the second one is transfer department. Subjects like education, agriculture, public health, and local government were transferred to the charge of governor acting with his ministers, who were made responsible to electorate of the province and not to the government of India. Education, with small exception, became provincial subject. It was under this hitherto unusual form of a political constitution that Indians first obtained the control of education department. This set the stage for Indian to face the challenge of handicaps in financial management and control in respect of education in provincial administration, finance being a reserved subject with little power vested in the Indian ministers. Hartog Committee 1928-29. In May 1928, the Simon Commission appointed an auxiliary committee, popularly known as Hartog Committee, to review the position of education in the country. During 1920, it was decided to stop all further recruitment to the Indian Education Services, which is also known as IES. So the service would fade out within few years. Needless to say, the system of central grants, which had made such useful contribution to the educational development, also disappeared. The Hartog Committee in 1928 examined this situation with the concern and said, we are one of the opinion that divorce of the government of India from education has been unfortunate, and holding as we do the education essentially a national service, we are of opinion that steps should be taken to consider the new relationship of the central government with the subject. We have suggested that the government of India should serve as a central center of education information for the whole of India and as a means of coordinating the educational experience of the different provinces. But we regard the duties of central government as joining beyond that. We cannot accept the view that it should be entirely relieved of all responsibility for the attainment of universal primary education. It may be that some of the province, in spite of all efforts, will be unable to provide the funds necessary for that purpose. And the government of India should therefore be constitutionally enabled to make such enabled to make good such financial decisions in the interest of India as a whole. It was written in the report on page number 346. This view was carefully examined when the Government of India Act 1935 was passed. But the basic condition, the transfer of education to popular control in the province side by side with the Government of India continuing to be responsible to the Parliament, remained unchanged. Government of India Act 1935. The activities of department took a definite turned towards the education reconstruction soon after the provincial autonomy was granted under the Government of India Act 1935. The general organization pattern of the education department in those days was that there was a divisional inspector of schools in every revenue division with an assistant inspector of Mohammedan schools except for Kumaon division to advise maktabs and other Muslim schools in the division. The inspector of the schools had under him heads of Anglo-Hindustani and Hindustani institutions for boys and a deputy inspector of schools in each district who was assigned by the sub-deputy inspectors in matter relating to the primary education. For the education of girls, the province was divided into 10 circles under each under an inspectress of girls school with a chief inspectress at the headquarter. Each inspectress held in her jurisdiction similar charge as of that inspector of schools and was assisted by an assistant inspectress in most districts. The actual provisions were made in the Government of India Act 1935, abolished the old distinctions between reserved and transferred the subjects and limitations placed on the power of educational ministers. The whole of the education thus became a transferred subject except in few cases. Let us read about the next report, which was also known as Abbott Wood Report, which was given in 1936-1937. In pursuance of the resolution of 1935, the Central Advisory Board of Education, two expert advisors, Messrs. Abbott and Wood, were invited in 1936 to advise the government on certain problems of education, recognition, and particularly on the problems of vocational education. So, if you see here, this is an important point wherein it could be a point in the examination that might be, that might come. They can read out this particular line in a question and might ask you that this particular report was given by whom. So, answer is Abbott Wood Report, and in the year 1936-37. So the Abbott Wood report submitted in 1937 suggested a complete hierarchy of vocational institutions parallel with the hierarchy of institutions imparting general education. As a result of their recommendations, a new type of technical institution called as polytechnic came into existence. So you see, when you see this concept in the paper, when they ask you about when did polytechnic came into existence, or the concept of polytechnic is written in whose report, you can easily tell it was given by the recommendation of Abbott Wood report in 1937. The provinces also started technical, commercial, or agricultural high schools conducting non-literary courses. So vocational and polytechnic came into existence by Abbott Wood report. It is an important point of remembrance. Sargent Report 1944. In 1944, the Central Advisory Board of Education submitted a comprehensive report on the post-war educational development known as the Sargent Report, visualizing visualizing a system of universal, compulsory, and free education for all the boys and the girls between the age of 6 and 14. The senior basic or the middle school to be final stage in the school career of majority of the pupils. The report also recommended that the middle school stage provision should be made for the variety of courses extending over a period of 5 years after the age of 11. These courses, while preserving an essentially cultural character, should also be designed as to prepare the pupils for the entry to the industrial and commercial occupations as well as into the universities. It was recommended that high school course should cover 6 years. The normal age of admission being 11 years at the high school should be of two main types: A, academic; B, technical. The objective of both of these should be to provide a good all round education combined with some preparation in the later stages of the career, which pupils will pursue on leaving the schools. So when it comes to recommendation given for the high schools and their admission, it was given in the Sargent report, which was submitted in 1944. This is an important point. Central Advisory Board of Education, CAB. The Central Advisory Board of Education, the oldest and the most important advisory board of Government of India in education, was first established in 1920. So in the paper, they might ask you what was the year when CAB was established. It is 1920. Under the chairmanship of Educational Commissioner to the Government of India. The idea that there should be a central advisory board of education was first put forward by the Calcutta University Commission in 1917 1919. It was dissolved in 1923 as a measure of economy. For the next 12 years, there was no central body to advise the Government of India in educational matters. However, a feeling of regret at the discontinuance of the board began to grow, especially after the report of Hartog Committee in 1928, which observed that the divorce between the Government of India and education has been unfortunate. Consequently, the Central Advisory Board of Education was revived in 1935. One of the great achievements of CAB was to prepare the post war Plan of Education Development in 1944. So, if you see here, this is again an important point which might come in examination, wherein they can ask you that what was the greatest achievement of CAB. So, it was to prepare the post-war plan of educational development, and it happened in the year 1944. It was also known as the Sargent Plan. It proposed to create, in a period of 40 years, an education system in India which would be like that in England in 1939. No wonder then that it was considered as the first official attempt to national system of education for India. It provided for pre-primary education, universal, compulsory and free primary education, liquidation of illiteracy in 20 years, compulsory physical education, proper training of teachers, education for the physically and mentally handicapped, and many other features that got incorporated in the 5-year plans in India soon after independence. So just let us quickly summarize whatever we have studied till now. It is evident that the different colonial powers followed the different policies in education, but one of the feature was common. Namely, they neglect mass primary education and adult literacy. There were different kind of educational institutions, but there were no national education systems as such. The British India is criticized for not having developed a truly national system of education, failing to evolve synthesis of Eastern and Western cultures, inadequate aims, that is, they sought to educate an army of civil servants but not with the aim of eventual self government, adopting wrong methods of administration, neglecting indigenous education, absence of any holistic plan to reach predetermined goals, allegedly neglecting vernacular education and shaping education policy to serve their own political and economic needs. Professor Basu has suggested various explanations for the alleged failure of British education policy in India. These include the nature of the bureaucratic machinery, limited finance, Indian resistance, unwillingness on the part of the British to incur unpopularity by adopting repressive measures, and dependence on Indians for the implementation of policy directives. That is it for this lecture today. I wish you all the best. In my next video, we will be discussing about the development of educational management in the post-independence era. So stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comment section below if you want me to discuss anything more about the topics that we have read today. I wish you all the best. Thank you.